today's episode of the Giraldo Show, we're going to be going over two stories. One story about how an attorney claims he represents multiple Trump whistleblowers, and a breaking news story that shows that the DNC colluded with the Ukraine to boost Hillary by harming Trump. And we're going to discuss that all in today's episode. My name is Sebastian Giraldo, and you are listening to the Giraldo Show. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. My name is Sebastian Giraldo, and you are listening to The Giraldo Show. As I mentioned earlier in the teaser for the episode, we're going to get right into the news about some Ukraine business and some more whistleblowers. So we're going to go ahead and start with an article about audio and email evidence that shows the DNC colluded with Ukraine to boost Hillary by harming Trump. So let's get right into this story. The Blaze has released an audio recording that they recently obtained that appears to show Artem Stiznik, director of the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine, admitting he tried to boost the presidential campaign of Hillary Clinton by sabotaging then-candidate Donald Trump's campaign. First off, that's a huge start to this article. I mean, getting actual information that the DNC colluded with the Ukraine back in 2016 to try to harm Trump, that is a huge story that honestly needs to be investigated if this turns out to be completely 100% true. The connection between the Democratic National Committee, the DNC, and the Ukrainian government was veteran Democratic operative Alexandra Chalupa, who had worked in the White House Office of Public Liaison during the Clinton administration, and then went on to work as a staffer, then as a consultant for Democratic National Committee. This is reported by Politico. Chalupa was working directly with the Ukrainian embassy in the United States to raise concerns about Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort, and according to Politico, she indicated that the embassy was working directly with reporters researching Trump, Manafort, and Russia to point them in the right directions. So it's looking like Chalupa was talking to the Ukrainian embassy, and the Ukrainian embassy were investigating Trump, Manafort, and Russia to try to find dirt on them in order to sabotage his campaign, which is exactly what the Democrats right now are trying to impeach Trump with, even though he did not do it as much as the DNC or as much as Joe Biden did back in that same year. The Ukrainian embassy political officer who worked at the embassy at the time, Andrei Telezenko, stated that the Ukrainians were coordinating an investigation with the Hillary team on Paul Manafort with Alexandra Chalupa, and that the embassy worked very closely with Chalupa. The Blaze highlighted an email from WikiLeaks from Chalupa to Louise Miranda at the DNC. And for those who don't know, WikiLeaks is the whole thing where people try to collude WikiLeaks with Donald Trump, saying that that's how the Russia collusion worked. So this is the email that came out. Hey, a lot coming down the pipe. I spoke to a delegation of 68 investigative journalists from Ukraine last night at the Library of Congress, the Open World Society Forum. They put me on the program to speak specifically about Paul Manafort. I invited Michael Isakov, who I've been working with for the past few weeks, and connected him to the Ukrainians. More offline tomorrow, since there is a big Trump component you and Lauren need to be aware of that will hit in the next few weeks. Something I'm working on that you should be aware of. So that's the email saying pretty much that Chalupa spoke to Louise Miranda, saying that she spoke to 68 journalists from Ukraine to try to speak about Paul Manafort and to find information about Trump. The Blaze then reported that Stiznik, who eventually was tried and convicted in Ukraine for interfering in the U.S. presidential election in 2016, released a black ledger on Manafort during the 2016 presidential election that eventually led to Manafort's downfall. So here he is. He is admitting to tampering with our elections, admitted working with the Hillary Clinton campaign. This is Glenn Beck this is what Glenn Beck said during a 2-hour special presentation by The Blaze concerning the Ukraine investigation in the U.S. election. He is actually convicted in the highest court in the land in Ukraine. This is all front page news in Ukraine. While we are saying, was there anyone tampering with the election? So this is big. The person that Stiznik, he's actually being tried right now by the highest court in the Ukraine for colluding with the Clinton campaign to try to find dirt on Trump. Again, this is huge, and I'm assuming that the media is not really covering it. I don't really watch CNN or Fox. I try to get my news online, but I will try eventually to start listening to what the news has to say, especially TV news. In audio exclusively obtained by The Blaze, Stiznik appeared to admit that he worked to boost Clinton by harming Trump's campaign by releasing the Black Ledger. Stiznik also essentially admitted that Trump was better for America than Clinton was because Clinton belonged to the establishment while Trump's focus was solely on promoting America. This is a transcript of the translated Ukrainian tape. Kolya, did those Russians, help Trump, your people? Stiznik, I think they did. Yeah, I helped them too. Not him, but Hillary. I helped her. Kolya again. Yeah, right. Then her position tottered, right? Stiznik, well, this is how they write about it. Ivan, Hillary's humanitarian aid, and it's indiscernible from there. Kolya then says, well, I'm about, ellipses, the commentaries. At the time, we were not, more indiscernible. Stiznik then says in a large paragraph, Trump, ellipses, is purely inner problem, ellipses, issue, another ellipses. They dominate over the external matters. While Hillary, she is, how shall I put it? She belongs to the cohort of politicians who compromise the hegemony in the U.S., both in the U.S. and the entire world, right? For us, it's sort of better. For Americans, what Trump is doing is better for them. So here we have Stiznik, the actual person who is being tried for colluding, saying that Trump is a better candidate and a better overall for America than Clinton because Clinton is belonging to this cohort of politicians that compromise the U.S. And considering that Trump was never a politician until he ran for president, he really couldn't be a part of that. Continuing on with the transcript, Kolya says, well, we have lots of those American experts here now. Stiznik, well, there you see why Hillary lost the election. I was in charge of the investigation of their black accounting records. We made the Manafort's data available to general public. Kolya, so what? Stiznik, he was imprisoned. Manafort was the head of the Supreme headquarter of Trump, right? Then he was dismissed too, including due to the black accounting. After that, he was sentenced to 80 years of imprisonment term. How about Trump? Didn't I give an SHIT? They have their system working there, and it works smoothly. Kolya, everyone worked smoothly there. Stiznik, and when they carried out the elections a week before the elections, the FBI reopened the investigation in respect of Hillary. So her rating dropped for 7%, and that's why Trump managed to win the elections in a pinch. I am still unable to understand why he's fighting with the FBI. They try to catch him on the hand. If it were not the FBI, he would not have won the elections. They torpedoed Hillary's ratings for 7%. So here what Stiznik is saying is that the FBI reopened an investigation in respect for Hillary with this entire situation, and her ratings dropped 7%. A really significant chunk of her ratings dropped to 7%. And really, the FBI was a big factor in why Donald Trump was able to win, because people started to recognize, oh, wow, Hillary is getting an investigation reopened under. Maybe this is something serious. I don't want someone like this in the presidency, so people started voting for Trump. And even though Hillary won the popular votes, mostly due because of the coastal cities in Los Angeles, San Francisco, and New York City, all those liberalized cities that have a lot more people condensed into a smaller space, Trump won the overall electoral college vote. And again, I've mentioned this multiple times. This is why we have the electoral college in the United States. But that is the entire story of not the entire story, but this is the article that I have right now. I'll obviously be linking this article and the sources of the article in the description, so you can listen to Stiznik's and read Stiznik's conversation, and you can listen to what Glenn Beck said. But we're going to go ahead and go on to the next story, which is a breaking news story that came out yesterday, that an attorney claims that he now represents multiple Trump whistleblowers. So attorneys for the CIA whistleblower who brought forward a second-hand claim about President Donald Trump and his dealings with the Ukrainian leaders now say they are representing multiple people with knowledge of the events that led up to a congressional impeachment inquiry leveled against Trump last week. So now apparently we just have multiple whistleblowers. We just had one at the beginning who apparently had conversations with Adam Schiff, or at least Adam Schiff knew about the investigation, the whistleblower complaint before it was even released. But anyway, ABC News reports that lawyer Mark Zaid, who represents the first whistleblower, told host George Stephanopoulos that the second person, also described as an intelligence official, has first-hand knowledge of some of the allegations outlined in the original complaint and has been interviewed by the head of the Intelligence Committee's internal watchdog office. So now we have someone who apparently has first-hand knowledge. Before, the previous whistleblower did not have any first-hand knowledge. He heard it from someone else. It could be possible that this second whistleblower, if there really is a second whistleblower, could have given that information to the first whistleblower, and he was just the first person to release it. And now we have the second person with the actual first-hand knowledge that's coming out to say what it's all about. If this whistleblower is a primary source and does have first-hand knowledge of a phone call between Trump and the president of Ukraine, where the pair discussed former Vice President Joe Biden and his son Hunter, it could change the landscape of the impeachment inquiry completely, though precious few details about the second whistleblower are currently available aside from attorney statements. So again, if this whistleblower is actually a second whistleblower that has firsthand knowledge. Like the article says, it could very well change the landscape of this entire impeachment, because we're going to have someone that was on listening to the phone call while it happened, and that person could then provide details on whether there was actually a quid pro quo or whether there was actually any crime committed, even though with the transcript that was given to us, there was no direct allegation of quid pro quo. But the second whistleblower could provide extra information that the first one didn't, because again, the first whistleblower report was pretty vague in most parts. But let's see what the second whistleblower is going to say. A second attorney, Andrew Bakaj, who is also involved in representing the first whistleblower, confirmed to NBC News that there are actually multiple individuals who claim knowledge of Trump's dealings. So now we just don't have just one other person who claims collusion or claims that Trump did something with the Ukrainians. There are actually multiple people that claim this. So this is what Bakaj says. He said this to NBC News. I can confirm that my firm and my team represent multiple whistleblowers in connection to the underlying August 12, 2019 disclosure to the Intelligence Community Inspector General, Bakaj told NBC News on Sunday morning. He reiterated his statement in a tweet. The second or potentially third or fourth whistleblower has not yet communicated with Congress, Zaid told ABC. A New York Times report from Friday, which suggested the existence of a second whistleblower in the intelligence community, noted that the whistleblower was still weighing whether to come forward with his or her allegations. It is not clear, as ABC News confirms, that the New York Times whistleblower and Zaid's second whistleblower are the same person. So again, we have a very interesting dilemma here for the second whistleblower. He's really determining whether he should come out or not. And honestly, I think if he does have information of an actual crime being committed, I think it's important that he does come out, because again, we need to have all the information possible. The American people need to know, and I think it's very important for any evidence to come out, even if there is evidence of a collusion or not. The complaint or series of complaints stems from a July 25th phone call between President Trump and Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, where Trump supposedly asked Zelensky to cooperate in a probe into whether Biden improperly communicated with Ukrainian prosecutors, asking them to avoid prosecuting a Ukrainian gas company with ties to his son Hunter, ostensibly in return for favors or an increase in aid. Just days before the call, the White House had cut off a source of aid to the Eastern European nation, but had not yet announced the change. So that was a bit of a summary of what has been happening over the past few weeks with the Trump and Ukraine story, but it's important to note that the Ukrainian president, and I think the Attorney General of the Ukraine, they both came out saying that they did not actually know that foreign aid had been cut from them until a month after the phone call, which is, I think it's very important to note, because if there really was a quid pro quo where Trump was saying, if you don't investigate, I'm going to withdraw aid, I'm pretty sure the Ukrainians would know right away if they didn't start the investigation right away. But considering that they had to wait a month before they actually even had information that Trump had detained, or I guess you shouldn't say detained, that he withdrew aid from Ukraine, I think that's a very important detail. That phone call led to whistleblower complaints, but the whistleblower did not have first-hand knowledge of the interaction. Further documents revealed this week, putting his or her claims about the president's impropriety into question, because obviously we have the entire Adam Schiff debacle where he firsthand knew, and apparently his team actually had information for the whistleblower on how to proceed. So the transcript was released, and there was no quid pro quo, and there was no deal between the two leaders, obviously. And so there was Ukraine, and the Ukrainian officers say that they not feel pressured to investigate Hunter or Joe Biden. And there were text messages that were actually revealed during a congressional testimony that offer of a DC summit, possibly in return for investigation into Hunter and Joe Biden. But no investigation was actually announced, and no summit ever took place. So again, if there are multiple whistleblowers, we first have to determine that they actually potentially could have had firsthand knowledge. It's very important, because we can't just have multiple people coming out and saying that Trump colluded, because they would be probably lying. I'm not saying probably, but they could potentially be lying, I guess I should say. So it's very important that if there are multiple whistleblowers, that first they get investigated, making sure that their claims are true, making sure that the details run through, and if they do, then I think, again, like the article said, it could potentially change the entire impeachment inquiry entirely. So those are the two stories for the day, and I'm pretty sure that's going to be it for me today. So I hope you had a great time listening to this episode of the podcast. I appreciate everyone who's listening to me, especially the fans from all over the world. Saw that we had fans from Australia, from Ireland, from the Netherlands, from Canada, and from all over the United States. So I thank you a lot for tuning into the podcast. Make sure to give the episode a like, a follow on any platform that you listen to, and I'll see you at the same time tomorrow. My name is Sebastian Giraldo, and you're listening to The Giraldo Show.